Grab your popcorn, dim the lights, and let's wander into the wonderfully weird world of 1970s horror. The movies that failed spectacularly and somehow became unforgettable. Blood Freak, 1972. We're kicking things off with a masterpiece of madness. Picture this. A guy takes experimental drugs at a turkey farm and transforms into a giant turkey-headed monster. Yes, a turkey, with a paper-mâché head and a chainsaw, because why not? The film tries to deliver an anti-drug message wrapped in a Christian morality tale, but it ends up feeling like a PSA made by people who've never actually seen a PSA. The acting is stiff, the audio cuts out whenever it feels like it, and the narrator sits at a table smoking while lecturing you about sin like he wandered in from a completely different movie. There's a strange earnestness to the whole thing. The filmmakers treat that turkey monster like it's a profound metaphor instead of a craft store nightmare. That sincerity almost becomes its own kind of charm. The turkey monster stalks drug users, drains their blood, and somehow still manages to be less intimidating than your uncle after Thanksgiving dinner. It's clumsy, preachy, and absolutely ridiculous. And that's exactly why it's a blast. This is the kind of film you show friends just to watch their faces when the turkey head finally appears. Axe, 1974.
Not since the Texas Chainsaw Massacre has the screen delivered terror like Axe. In 1971, they rampaged throughout the South, until the farmhouse, until Pretty Lisa. Axe, shocking suspense, beyond anything before.
This one is a whole different flavor of strange. It's quiet, eerie, and feels like it was filmed inside a dream you'd have after falling asleep during a late-night horror marathon. 3 criminals hide out in a lonely farmhouse with a girl, Lisa, who looks like she hasn't slept since the moon landing. And from there, the movie drifts into this unsettling, slow-burn haze. The performances are stiff, the pacing crawls, and half the time, you're not sure if the characters are confused or if the actors simply forgot what scene they were in. But that stillness, the empty rooms, the long pauses, Lisa's blank stare, gives the whole film a strange, hypnotic pull. It feels like a movie made in total isolation, untouched by trends or expectations, which gives it this eerie, almost outsider art quality. That sense of detachment makes the farmhouse feel even more haunted than anything supernatural could. And while the film is often described as slow and dreamlike, it also contains a disturbing assault that becomes the catalyst for the girl's revenge, a moment the movie treats with a blunt, uncomfortable realism. When the violence finally arrives, it's abrupt and jarring, like the film suddenly remembered it was supposed to be terrifying. Axe isn't polished, but it lingers in your mind like a half-remembered nightmare you can't quite shake. The Love Butcher, 1975. Now we're diving straight into 70s insanity. A timid gardener transforms into his cool alter ego, a swaggering, wig-wearing, sunglasses-sporting persona who looks like he raided a thrift store's 1970s sleaze section and proceeds to murder people with gardening tools. It's meant to be psychological horror, but it plays like a soap opera that wandered into a slasher film by accident.
You don't know? Sure. But, dude, you dig the sound?
Oh, it's just super, but my husband doesn't dig it, though. He's a little on the, paunchy side.
You kidding? I would think you'd be married to a big movie star, like Fernando Lamas, Carlos Bedoya, Xavier Coulgard. I mean, dynamite chick like...
The kills are awkward, the seduction scenes are unintentionally hilarious, and the villain's transformation is so dramatic you'd think he was auditioning for a telenovela. One moment he's mumbling into his shirt collar, and the next he's strutting around like he owns the neighborhood. Watching it feels like stumbling across a bizarre relic at a flea market. You don't know what it is, but you can't stop examining it. The deeper you get, the more you start to admire how boldly it commits to its own weirdness. But that chaotic energy is exactly what makes The Love Butcher unforgettable. It feels like every person on set was making a different movie, and somehow all those mismatched pieces fused into something bizarrely entertaining. Alice, Sweet Alice, 1976. Here's a curveball, a film that's genuinely good, but still strange enough to belong on this list. A translucent mask, a yellow raincoat, Catholic guilt thick enough to choke on, and a very young Brooke Shields who gets top billing despite barely being in the movie. And here's the fun twist. She wasn't top billed in the original 1976 release. Back then, the film was called Communion. It was only after Brooke Shields became famous from Pretty Baby in 1978 that the movie was re-released and remarketed around her, despite her being in the film for about 5 minutes. A perfect example of 70s marketing chaos. What makes Alice, Sweet Alice, so haunting is the atmosphere. The film was shot in Paterson, New Jersey. That specific blue-collar Catholic community setting is a big reason the atmosphere feels so authentic and different from Hollywood horror. Everything feels damp, cramped, and slightly off, like the whole movie was filmed in a church basement that still smells like old hymn books. The camera lingers just a beat too long, the music wails in all the wrong ways, and every character looks like they're hiding something. It's a film that creeps under your skin without ever raising its voice, relying on mood instead of jump scares. That quiet dread sticks with you long after the credits fade. And that mask, blank, cheap, and deeply unsettling, should have become a Halloween staple. The kills aren't flashy, but they're mean, and the film's rough edges give it a dangerous, unpredictable vibe that modern slashers rarely capture. The Astral Factor, 1978.
Apparent strangulation, Lieutenant. Her larynx appeared to be totally crushed.
This one is strange, even by 70s standards. The killer, Roger Sands, isn't a psychic strangler, so much as a murderer who learns to make himself invisible by studying paranormal techniques in prison. Astral projection is the method, invisibility is the result, and the movie treats this like it's the most normal thing in the world. The filmmakers try to show his half-visible state with wavy distortion effects that look like someone smeared petroleum jelly on the lens. Meanwhile, the police have no idea how to handle a murderer who keeps slipping into another dimension whenever things get inconvenient. The whole thing plays like the aftermath of a late-night philosophy debate that spiraled into a screenplay. Even when the logic collapses, you stay glued to the screen just to see what bizarre turn it'll take next. And the investigator delivering all the serious exposition isn't a psychiatrist. It's Lieutenant Charles Barrett, who approaches the paranormal with the gravitas of a man who's already had the worst week of his life. Sands himself spends so much time lamenting his tragic existence that he starts to feel more like a melodramatic theater kid than a threat. But that's the charm. The Astral Factor tries so hard to be profound that it loops back into being wonderfully silly. Rituals, 1977. Imagine Deliverance, but colder, wetter, and Canadian. A group of doctors heads into the wilderness for their annual camping trip, and everything unravels the moment someone steals their boots. That's when you know things are about to get grim. The film stars Hal Holbrook, a genuinely respected stage and screen actor who was in Mark Twain Tonight and All the President's Men. The Canadian wilderness feels endless and uncaring, and the movie leans into that isolation with both hands. You can practically feel the damp air and hear the river rushing as the group slowly realizes they're being hunted by someone who knows the woods far better than they do. There's a raw human desperation that creeps in as the group deteriorates, giving the film an emotional weight you don't expect from its budget. The wilderness becomes a character of its own, unforgiving, relentless, and always one step ahead. And the killer? A disfigured World War II veteran whose trauma has twisted into something feral and vengeful. It's a detail that adds a surprising layer of tragedy beneath the brutality. Sure, the budget was tiny. Some scenes drag, some shots look like they were filmed on borrowed equipment, and the killer's backstory is lightly sketched. But that roughness gives the film a raw, lived-in quality. By the time the final confrontation arrives, you're not just watching a horror movie. You're watching a group of people unravel in real time.
Come on, let me tell you something, buddy. You know what you are? A chicken! You're a chicken shit! Scum of the earth! Son of a bitch!
The Car, 1977. The Car is exactly what it sounds like. A giant, black, demonic Lincoln Continental that terrorizes a small desert town. No driver, barely an explanation, just pure automotive evil with a horn that sounds like it's personally offended by your existence. Fun fact, the car was a customized 1971 Lincoln Continental Mark III, built by legendary car customizer George Barris, the same man who built the original Batmobile. The police try everything, roadblocks, negotiations, shooting at it, but you can't reason with a vehicle that behaves like it has road rage and supernatural powers. The car even taunts people, revving its engine like it's laughing. It's basically Jaws, but with a sedan. The plot is thin, the logic is non-existent, and the car somehow manages to have more personality than half the cast. But that's the charm. The car is the kind of 70s horror that embraces its own absurdity with total confidence. And by the end, you're cheering for the movie simply because it commits so hard to the bit.
This one. Who calls me from out of the pit? What is thy purpose?
The Devil's Reign, 1975. This one is legendary. Ernest Borgnine plays Jonathan Corbus, a demonic cult leader whose transformation into a goat-like entity is one of the wildest practical effects moments of the decade. William Shatner screams dramatically in the desert, and the finale is basically 10 straight minutes of people melting like wax figures left under a heat lamp. The story involves a satanic cult, a cursed book, and a family curse, but the plot is really just an excuse for the special effects team to go wild. The melting sequence goes on for so long it becomes hypnotic. You stop trying to understand it and just let the gooey chaos wash over you. The whole thing feels like you've stumbled into a ritual you weren't invited to. Dramatic, chaotic, and impossible to look away from. By the time it's over, you're left blinking at the screen, unsure whether you watched a movie or survived an initiation. Borgnine commits so hard, you'd think he was performing Shakespeare. And Shatner delivers every line like the fate of the universe depends on it. And if the Shatner-Borgnine combo wasn't enough, a young Tom Skerritt is also in this thing. Yes, the same Tom Skerritt who'd go on to face a xenomorph in Alien just 4 years later. Apparently, The Devil's Reign was good practice. And if Shatner, Borgnine, and Skerritt weren't enough, a young John Travolta appears as a cult member. Saturday Night Fever was still 2 years away, and apparently this was how he got his start.
Never, never come back, never.
Get out? Why get out? There's no reason.
Oh, there's plenty of reason.
My name is Charlotte. What's yours?
Up the airy mountain, down the rushing glen. You never can go hunting for fear of little men.
Don't Look in the Basement, 1973. This is pure grindhouse grit. It feels like it was shot in a single weekend with a cast who learned their lines in the parking lot. The story takes place in a remote mental institution where the staff is questionable and the patients are even more unpredictable. From the first scene, something feels wrong, and that tension never lets up. The performances are all over the place. One character whispers like they're in a ghost story, another screams every line, and someone else stares into the void like they're trying to remember if they left the oven on. There's a reckless ambition behind every scene, as if the filmmakers were determined to make something unforgettable no matter the limitations. That chaotic energy gives the film a strange, claustrophobic pull that's hard to shake. The kills are rough, the editing is jagged, and the whole film has a sweaty, claustrophobic vibe that makes you feel like you're trapped in that house with them. It's messy, it's loud, and it's unforgettable in the way only 70s exploitation cinema can be. The 1970s gave us some of the strangest, boldest horror ever put on film. Messy, creative, and impossible to forget. These movies prove you don't need a big budget to make something unforgettable. Which of these oddball gems do you remember? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love exploring the weird corners of movie history, hit like and subscribe. Stay spooky, stay nostalgic, and keep loving the wonderfully weird.